Hello everybody, welcome back and welcome to session number 3, our YouTube session number 3 for F330, Folklore and the Environment. Well, let's get started. We're in the second part of our week number 10, and our theme, as you know, is Performing the Sacred. And first, I want to thank the 12 of you who responded to YouTube session number 2 with some very worthwhile comments, and I had the opportunity to reply to your responses, and that was fine. But I am wondering about the rest of you. I'm assuming that you're all looking at these YouTubes, which are our primary means of communication in the virus-inflected moment. And remember, in order to get credit for being present, for, I guess, attendance, so to speak, you need to produce a comment to each of these YouTube communications. So, if you haven't done that, or if you weren't aware that you need to do it, now you know. Now, I should already have your thought piece number 8. I've looked at some of them, so I know that the portal on Canvas is working. This will be fine. We'll be able to connect with your written work through Canvas, so that's going to be just fine. Let me say that I uploaded onto Canvas a sheet of resources for Monday, March 30, and it's got some good stuff on it. I've got the Performing the Sacred key concepts that we talked about on Monday a little bit. And then I have the little blurb from Chad Hamill's article about the sacred continuum. And then I put up 3 resource links that I think you'll find interesting. One for the Spokane tribe that Chad Hamill belongs to and writes from that perspective. And then a very nice recording of Woody Guthrie singing his song about Roll on Columbia. And it's such a strange perspective to get on Woody Guthrie, always one of the great heroes for folklorists and the folk song movement and so forth. But we see him in a little bit of a different light, and that's always interesting to get these different perspectives. And then the other one is, yes, the sheep's horn spoon comes up in the Coyote story. Remember when Coyote is opening up the dam so that the salmon can swim up the river? The 2 sisters come and start beating him over the head, but he has put a sheep's horn spoon over his head so that when they whack him on the head, it doesn't bother him. And it turns out sheep's horn spoons is a kind of a traditional craft that's very important in the sort of northwestern communities, the native peoples in that part of the continent. All right, let's turn to Chie's chapter, which will be our primary concern for this installment of the YouTube F330 experience. Well, Chie's chapter shows us how whaling connects the Arctic and the Azores. And the Azores is this little scattering of islands sort of out in the middle of the Atlantic there. It's technically belongs to the nation of Portugal, although it's considered an autonomous region of Portugal. Of course, in the Arctic, Chie has spent time with the Inupiat people, and so she writes from that perspective. What we see in her article is a focus on a number of forms of expressive culture, song, of course, and she ends the piece nicely with the idea that if these whaling people want to welcome one another, how would they do it? They would do it through song, and I think that's a kind of a wonderful concept. But there's also dance and music, of course, various kinds of music, and festival is very important, festival in both of these communities. One theme that she brings out, which we haven't dealt with explicitly that much this semester, is the connection to Christianity, to organized religion. And it's quite interesting. We have 2 Christianities here. Of course, we have the Protestant missionaries who came up to the Arctic and missionized there, and starting in the 1920s or so, very rapidly converted the northern people to that brand of Christianity. But then in Portugal, and the Azores, of course, being an extension of Portugal, we have the Catholic religion. So it's quite interesting that these two different versions of Christianity have come into contact with these whaling cultures, and the music and song and festivities that these communities produce are interlaced with this Christian component of their cultures. So that's a theme that I think is important to Chie, and comes out in her chapter. And then, of course, I want to turn our attention to the one song text that she gives us, which is the Boi do Mar, the bull of the sea, the ox of the sea. And let me just say that we're for example, in your third short critical essay, you'll be taking a close look at the feature that we've worked on in the past called texture, okay? Not the content, not the context, but the texture, the way expression is actually shaped. And one of the things, of course, you can listen to this song, and I'm going to upload a sheet of resources for Chie, and there's a beautiful performance of the Boi do Mar, so you'll enjoy that. And of course we can look at all of the melodic features and rhythmic features and so forth of the poetry. But one thing that I would draw our attention to just briefly here is the play of metaphor. And if you look at the English translation to the song, it has lines like, "Let us harpoon hope," okay? So this idea of using the instrument of the whalers, but in this context, not to harpoon a whale, but to harpoon hope, so a more kind of figurative expression there. The whale is the ox of the sea, the song says later on. It says, "Those who planted dreams in the waters." So this metaphorical use of language, who from the harpoon made their bread, okay, so earned their way of their sustenance and so forth. And then they suffered on the windstorms of emotion. So this metaphorical practice here, this metaphorical feature of the song text, is something that you could isolate as a feature of texture, that is not the content, but the way the idea is expressed. It's expressed metaphorically, and then you could wonder, well, what is it about metaphor that is so interesting? And there we come to metaphor being a kind of a leap of the imagination. Metaphor allows us to compare different realms of experience and to find, underlying truth and so forth. So that would be a textural feature that you could look at in reference to Boi do Mar, the text that Chie gives us there. And then the last thing I would say, just catching a few of the highlights of Chie's chapter, is that it's an interesting inspection of the heritage process. The heritage process in the sense of, if we look at the Arctic peoples, they are still whale hunting peoples, even though whale hunting is becoming a little bit residual, partly due to the impact of climate change, which is making it more difficult for the Arctic peoples to find the whales. But when we look at the Azores, we see that they've shifted from whale hunting to whale watching, and so whale hunting is becoming very much a feature of their heritage more than their actual living experience. And we'll be talking next week about heritage, and that'll be this will be a kind of an interesting segue into our discussion of heritage. So I'll be uploading a set of resources for the Chie chapter, and as I said, one of them will be a very nice, a really beautiful performance of Boi do Mar, so you'll enjoy that, and I do hope you'll take a look at the resources as I continue to make them available to you in the coming weeks. Next up, I should mention that thought piece number 9 will be coming your way shortly after I release this YouTube session number 3. So thought piece number 9 will be coming up, and in that one I'm going to ask you to select one of the key concepts in our set of concepts for performing the sacred, and then look at how that concept plays out in reference to the 2 readings that we're doing for this week. So I'll be putting that up on Canvas with a portal, so you can upload your your thought pieces. That's just a one-page deal. I don't want you to write a big essay about it. Just one page to put some thoughts together on that particular theme. Well, moving towards closure here, please respond to this YouTube session by adding a comment. It can be a brief comment. It can be a thought that occurs to you in the context of something I've said or something that you've noticed in the chapter by Chie. And remember, to get credit for attendance, I need to see your comment there in that trail of comments on the YouTube session. So be sure and do that. Well, I think that's the main thing that I need to communicate with you today. So I'm going to go about my business, but I'll say farewell for the moment, and I'll see you on Monday. Okay, ciao.